Okay, good morning. So we're up to Shin Mem Gimel, getting towards the very end of Chelek Gimel of Hilchos Shabbos of Shulchan Aruch. So Shin Mem Gimel, very interesting one. It will probably spill over till tomorrow, but let's see how we can do. And basically, we're going to have some rules of Chinuch from the Chafetz Chaim here. Very interesting siman. Din a cotton b'Shabbos. This is the halachas of a child on Shabbos. Says the Mechaber. Cotton oichel nevelas. Ein based in mitzuvin hafrishay. If a child eats nevelas, non-kosher food, ein based in mitzuvin hafrishay. Based in are not obligated, not commanded to prevent him from eating it. Avul oviv mitzuva ligar by, but the father is mitzuva to rebuke the child, will hafrishay, and to remove and to prevent him from eating nevela. Says the brackets may issa d'oraisa, from an issa d'oraisa, but not a drabanan. Also, but to actually actively feed him, that is even also to give him things which are also midrabanan. And one should, it's also to accustom him to do things which are wrong, which are chil Shabbos or Yom and even things which are only midrabanan. Okay, let's have a look at the Mishnah Berurah for some details. Nevelas. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Aleph. V'hu adin kol shar isurim. So not lav dafka nevela, but any other things which are also. V'chein chil Shabbos im oisel ledas atzma. And so too, if a child is being mechal Shabbos on his own account, then based on a not mitzuva lafrishav and oisel bishvil gadol tzorach limches biyado. But if this child is doing it for the benefit of an adult, then you've got to protest. Okay, aval oviv. So the base din not mitzvah lafrishay, but oviv is mitzvah ligar bayal lafrishay me'isa deraisa. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton base da'afilu lechanech bonov b'noisov b'mitzvahs hutel olav. The obligation is on the parent, of course, to educate his child. The mitzvah of chinuch in a technical sense is also on the mother. So it's a few interesting points here. Let's take a look at footnote number 2. So first of all, what's the rule is, according to this sif in Shulchan Aruch, that a child who's doing isurim min haTorah based in a not mitzvah lafrishay, but the parents are at least from an issa d'oraisa. So first of all, footnote number 2. What about if the child is? We're talking about a child who's not yet reached the age of chinuch. He's quite young. Says footnote number 2. What about a child who is special needs, let's say, and he hasn't got the das? Kosav hakafachayim she'enu mechuyev kiven shelo yavo lechlal pikchus. If a child will never get to the point of pikchus, of having that da'as, that sort of certain mental awareness, lo shaykh bohem din chinuch. The whole concept of chinuch is not applicable to him. But to feed him things which are also, which are treif, kosva prima godim, she'also, k'may she'also la'achilan cotton. Just like you can't feed a child, well, also even if the child will never get to the stage of being a pikeach, that would also not be allowed. Okay, now what about a child if a child is not home? So if there's an interesting footnote in footnote 3, the second paragraph of footnote 3, he says, which means the kid's in school, he's not at home. So who then has the responsibility? Since parents hired a Rabbi or a Chinuch system for the kid, the Rabbi is now midin schirus. He's been hired to educate the child. And therefore, in loco parentis, as we say, the Rebbe has that obligation. And now, if you look at footnote 4, if you look at the second paragraph, on Mikol Mokum, we said that the Mishnah Berurah finished off and said that technically speaking, that the mitzvah of chinuch is on the father, although he finishes off and says, Yesh ma'achronim shesovim mitzvahs chinuch mutal gam aloim. He says there in the second paragraph, even according to those who hold that the mother is not obligated in chinuch, if she is mechanech the child, she gets a mitzvah for it. Number one. And number two, if sadly a child does not have a father, then the mitzvah of chinuch is transferred to the mother and to the beis din. Next paragraph in footnote 4. Regard that's the technical chinuch we're talking about till now, but the more general chinuch of good midas and yiras shamayim, says Reb Nissim Karelitz, true, she might be exempt from the technical mitzvah of chinuch, that is imposed not only on the father but even on the mother. And perhaps it's more of an obligation on the mother because she spends more time with him, certainly in those early years, and therefore she definitely is in mechuyev to teach midas and yiras shamayim. Okay, weiter in the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Gimel. So we said that Cotton Eichel Nevelas, Beis Din is not mitzvah hafrishay. Beis Din is not obligated to prevent him from doing it, but the father is when it comes to an Issa Deraisa. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Gimel, Be'emes afilu me'Issa Drabanon Chayiv lafrisha. The truth is, you are obligated even to prevent him from doing this drabanon. Just like you've got an obligation to be mechanachim in mitzvahs drabanon, to make sure he hears Megillah, or to light Chanukah candles, or chudel b'siman kuvov sif aleph. And therefore you should stop him from doing Isrei Drabanan as well. And a nafkamina be'Isrei Drabanan im lo frishu ha'av ein beisin meichin biyodei. The point of the nafkamina would be this: when it comes to Isrei Drabanan, if the father does not stop him from doing it, ein beisin meichin biyodei. Beisin don't protest. Avol be'Isrei Deraisa. But if the father is not stepping in and preventing his son from doing an Isrei Deraisa, then beisin meichin biyad ha'av lahafrisha. Beisin will step in. V'hagra. That's why it says Mr. Deraisa, the Mr. Rabbanon part because in Mr. Rabbanon sometimes they would not be obligated to prevent him from doing it. And sometimes even lechatchila you can give this to him. If there is a need for it, then actually it would be okay. If the child benefits from this activity, for example, rechitza on Yom Kippur, or Pashat, that would be okay. If you look at footnote 7, in the second paragraph, he says, well, the Indian losses lekotan lechol b'Shabbos kodim kiddush, to give the kid to eat before kiddush, kosav le'el, we've said this before, shemutza kivin sheletzarchu v'asal anoisei. It's allowed. So to give kids to eat before Kiddush, no problem, and you can't afflict them. And so too, if you want to give a kid to eat before Shacharis, kosav le'el, shemuta v'asal anoisei. V'hoisiv hagoner b'Yashiv, shemuta loses le dafka eichel shemaspia avaloi divrei mesika. So give him, fruit, or give him something, but not sweets and things like that. Okay. Continuing the Mishnah Berurah, or Pashut, we're about halfway down the right-hand column, or Pashut im shama livnei bitay haktanim shem redavim lashon hara. I always find it interesting when the Chafetz Chaim in Hilchos in the Mishnah Berurah starts talking about lashon hara, which is his that's his area. Of course, well, everything is his area, but particularly this, when he's the one who's brought it to fame, if you like, in the 20th century in our times. But he now talks about it in the Mishnah Berurah. He says, if a parent hears their son or daughter speaking lashon hara, mitzvah ligar bohem will afrishim izeh. It's a mitzvah to rebuke them and to prevent them from speaking it. V'chein machlekes v'sheker klolos. And so too, if kids are involved in arguing, or sheker, they're lying, or klolos, they're cursing people. Many parents slip up on this. They say kids are kids, let them speak lashon hara, let them curse, but then it becomes they become accustomed to it. It's very hard to break the habit once they're older. Shonim Rabbis, they're used to this way for many years. And it almost becomes mutter. If you look at footnote 9, he says, in his famous Sefer Chafetz Chaim, he adds, if you accustom children from a young age not to speak Lashon Hara, not to curse or lie or whatever, you implant this as a midah from a young age. It becomes natural for them. And therefore it becomes much easier for them to train themselves to speak properly when they get older. And therefore they'll merit, their children will merit to get Olam Haba, and they'll have a pleasant life in this world as well. Etc. Okay, continuing the Mishnah Berurah. Vada, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom on the right hand column. Vada, the Shir HaChinuch b'mitzvahs hasei hu b'chol tinuk lefi charifosav v'diasei. What is the Shir of Chinuch? It depends on the child, on the maturity and the intelligence of the child. B'chol davar lefi inyan. Every matter is different. Kagoin hayodeh minyan Shabbos. For example, if the kid understands the concepts of Shabbos, chayev lahargilo lishma kiddush v'avdalah. Hayodeh lehisatif b'halacha chayev v'sitzis v'chanal b'siman yud zayin. There, the post can be given an age of generally 3. That's when he starts wearing tzitzis. V'chein kol kiyotze b'zeh. Bein b'mizasei shel Torah, bein b'shel divrei sofrim. Aval hachinuch b'loisasei. When it comes to chinuch in the negatives, in the loisasei, bein shel Torah, bein shel divreihem, hu b'chol tinok shul bar havona. Then it depends on his understanding. Shemevin k'she'omrim lo shezeh osa la'asos olechol. That if he understands that you tell him that you can't eat this or you can't do this, if he understands, that's when it kicks in. Aval tinok she'ena bar havona klal. But if the child is just lacking that intelligence, ein oviv mitzuva. The father is not chayav to prevent him from eating these forbidden foods. He He's too young, he doesn't understand it at all, and therefore there's no problem whatsoever. And so too, if he's a kohen, you don't have to actually tell him to avoid going into Beis HaTzuma. He's got to be understanding. Azai mitzvah alaviv loitzir kedei lafrisha minu is a machmas mitzvahs chinuch, because the tumas kahuna applies even for a cotton, and therefore once he's a bar havana, he understands you've got to stop him from violating it. To bring him into a house where there is tumah there, v'chein lispois lo b'shar isurim, and to facilitate other isurim also afilu b'tinuk she'ena bar havana adayin. That would be even if he's not bar chinuch, you've got to try and avoid that. She's close to her due date. She's allowed to go in. What about the fetus? Even if she's definitely going to give birth, maybe you're concerned, maybe this will be a boy, and therefore the fetus should not even be in the Oyel HaMeis, because when she gives birth, that's what might happen. Why? It's a double sofek. Maybe this child will be in a cave, not subject to tumas koyanim. Maybe the child won't survive. Now there's a very interesting footnote he has at the back. What about nowadays? Does that obligate the wife of a kohen to find out the gender of her child? So he says in the back, through ultrasound, whatever, that doesn't obligate the parents to find out. And therefore she's not obligated to find out. And then he says, he quotes then, if she knows that it's a child, she has done it. Also אלא שהיסף שמכל מקום זהו דווקא באופן שוודאי תלד שם. גם כשבוודאי שיש יכולים שם. שהם לא כן, עדיין יש ספקה, okay, fine. ומאידך, he then quotes the Vosna. Vosna writes, שאף שידע שאובר זוכר מותר לא להיכנס. The Vosna says, even if she knows that it's a child, that it's going to be a boy, she's allowed to go into a hospital if there's a mace there or something like that, because he quotes the Chasm Sofer that until the child emerges, there's no din of Tuman Tahara. It's called it's Tahara Belua Nitzmes. It's Belua. This fetus is Belua, and therefore it's not Shaykh yet. So there is what to rely on. There's no obligation to find out. Okay, let's just do Dalet, Sifkat and Dalet, then we'll pick up this tomorrow. So we said, Achila b'yodayim is also Achila b'dvarim she'asurim midivrei sofrim. So even the divrei sofrim, you can't actually, it's also to actually feed it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, also l'chol adam v'afilu hatinog einoi bar havana klal. Even if the child is not understanding at all, you shouldn't feed the child treifus. V'dov zehu also min ha'torah v'yalfinu lo medichsiv b'shrotzim lo sochlim ukro yiseruhu v'kiblu chazal d'roitz lema lo sachilim l'katanim, that you can't feed the child treifus. V'chein b'dam ksiv kol nefesh mikem lo seichel dam v'kiblu chazal d'roitz lema lo sachil l'katanim. V'chein tumas kahanim ksiv emer v'amaretz v'amar chazal emer gdolim shem l'katanim. V'hinei mishalosh mitzvahs elu anu lemedim l'chol ha'torah kula. V'chol Isrei Torah also l'achilim. But it applies to any Isser Torah. You cannot feed a child, even if they're not, they're under the age of Chinuch. Oilet salvosim she'avro, or command them to violate it. V'lochein also litzin letinak dvar machal shel Issa afilu lischek by shema yechlenu davi kamachila biyodayim. Therefore, to give a child, even play with his hamburger or whatever it is, this non-kosher sweet, that would also not be allowed. Okay, to be continued tomorrow.